G'day there, Jacquie here. I want to tell you about a friend that I had when I was about 12, 13, 14 years old. I had this friend that I met at Sunday school. So my parents went to Church of England, I think it was, and we were put into Sunday school, and there was a lot of other families there that obviously put their children into Sunday school. And I used to get into a lot of trouble in there. I had too many questions, I used to say. And there was this girl called Karen, and we got along so well. She was the same age as me. We actually spent a lot of time together socially, and would spend time at each other's houses. What was really interesting to me when I stayed over at her house the first time was that she had a radio in her bedroom. No biggie, right? But that radio was set to the local radio station, and it would play from the moment she went into her room to go to sleep until she woke up the next morning. She needed, and I think it was because, so she had to have it playing all night. And she'd been doing this since very, very early childhood when she was an infant. And if memory serves me correctly, one of the reasons why this was done is because it created a background noise in her bedroom. And I think it was possibly her mum or her mum and dad's way of finding a way to try and comfort her and soothe her when she was getting put down for a sleep by having some background noise. Yeah, it absolutely can help them to fall asleep. So they chose to put on the local radio station, and even just very low, it would play throughout her whole sleep time. As she grew older, this developed into a very subconscious pattern that the whole body-mind complex kind of developed a very strong relationship with. And there's a belief of, I can't sleep without the radio playing, became a thing where she actually couldn't sleep without it playing, obviously. So that's what would happen. The radio would play. And it was the strangest thing for me. And I really struggled to be able to sleep because this radio was right beside her bed, and it was just every single thing that was played on that radio was broadcast to her. And I know a lot of people kind of have this thought process of, well, you know, when you go to sleep, it's not a big deal because you're not listening to it and it doesn't really bother you. But even when you go to sleep and the conscious mind is disengaged and it goes to sleep, for want of a better term, the rest of the consciousness is not only aware, but it is listening, and it is like a gigantic sponge. It takes in every single bit of information, data, energy, consciousness that comes through that radio. The good, the bad, the ugly. So the reason for me explaining this or giving you this story is because she developed when I was around about 14. She all of a sudden developed this mysterious illness where she woke up one morning and she had no use of her legs. It literally looked like she had become paralyzed overnight. And she was put into hospital. She was there for quite a long time. They ran an enormous amount of tests. They could not find not one physiological reason as to why this was occurring. And after a lot of extensive investigation as into her environment and the way that she lives her life and what had been happening in her life, her medical team determined that it was psychological. In other words, it was the consciousness. The issue was with the consciousness, because we have lots of different levels of our mind, our consciousness. So as far as they were concerned, it was more of an issue that was within the subconscious mind, and then extending from the mind into the physical body and affecting the physical body. It took months and months and months for her to regain function. She literally had to learn to walk again, to have coordination again, build strength back into her body. And so one of the things that they did was they removed the radio. They prevented any radio from being broadcast into a room, and kind of went cold turkey, for want of a better word, but just disconnected her from any kind of news broadcasting or anything like that. What came to light over the following months with the help of a medical team and I think it was a psychiatrist, was that she had been, meaning her consciousness, particularly her subconscious mind, had been taking in all of this information from the news. So the news, the really big broadcast of the news was done at the top of every hour. And then every half an hour, a smaller broadcast of most up-to-date news was on there. And it was so, what the information coming through from the news was so negative and was so focusing on the bad, focusing on injury, on illness, on conflict, on war, on loss, on death, on all these topics that we are not naturally meant to be pointing our attention and focus towards, that we are not meant to be bringing into our consciousness, because of how profoundly it affects our own state of being. And when I say that, I mean all levels of our own state of being. So it was a situation where they had to do a massive purification and cleanse process on our whole body mind complex. They had to eliminate not just the negativity from her life, but they also had to do some work with her, considerable work, to look at how all of this news, all of this negativity, how it had come in and affected her, particularly different parts of her brain, particularly the amygdala complex. So what it was doing was that it was triggering the amygdala, triggering the nervous system, and putting it into heightened states of freeze and fight flight. So what happened was that when her body went into a process of immobility, that was it freezing. That was not just the amygdala, but that was the body freezing, being paralyzed by life, because she was scared of life. She was scared of what's coming, what's going to happen. The world is bad. It's unsafe. All these kinds of things. So that was, at that age, a wonderful experience, but very telling experience. And boy, did that spark my curiosity around psychology and consciousness. And I think it was a catalyst event for me that just fueled me to be more of an observer, to understand the way that we work, the way that animals work, the way that the world works around us, the way that we respond to the world around us. So my sharing of all of this is, I want to ask you, do you watch or read or listen to the news? And if you do, why? Like, really, truly, don't tell me, tell yourself. Be absolutely, authentically honest with yourself. Because I tell you right now, when this comes up in people's sessions and someone's own innate wisdom says, disconnect from the news, stop watching the news, stop listening to the news, stop entertaining the news, stop giving your time to the news, stop giving your energy to the news. Like, it is a waste of your time, a waste of your life. This is what people's own innate wisdoms are bringing forward for them to ponder and consider. What happens is that the subconscious mind The ego actually steps forward usually at that time and says, well, I'll tell you why we listen to the news, because I need to know what's going on in the world. And if I don't know what's going on in the world, then I don't feel safe, and it helps me to be informed, and I would feel uncomfortable if I didn't watch the news. So the ego comes forward with all of its stories and its BS and its insecurities and its belief systems, and tells all of its stories as to why it needs to listen to the news. You do not need to listen to the news to be informed of the world around you, of what you need to be informed with. Meaning, whatever it is that you need to know, it will find you. It will come and find you. You will find out through conversation or through reading it on a notice board. And on that note, before the news, which, remember, please, it is a business. The news is a business. It's not a community service announcement. It's not done or generated from the perspective of really genuinely, from this heart-filled space, wanting to bring you information that they think will enrich your life and help you in a meaningful way. It is not done from that perspective. It is a business. It is profits-based. It is manipulative. They consciously are manipulative. They also consciously know. So all the people who own these corporations, all the way down to the broadcasters and everything, and the producers, and I've had clients who are producers behind the scenes, and so they've shared an enormous amount of information with me about this. Every single one of them are consciously aware of how profoundly this affects you negatively. And they're very calculated and manipulative by the words that they use and how they present that news. It's designed to be presented in a way that it immediately, within the first 15-20 seconds, it has hooked into your amygdala and your nervous system. It has fired them alight. So the amygdala goes, what's going on? Oh my gosh, I need to keep watching more, because then I won't know how to defend myself when I leave the house, or what to be aware of, or have to tell my kids. And right, they know exactly how to hook into the amygdala and different parts of the brain, so that the amygdala basically thinks, I need more. I'm going to need more news. I'm going to have to watch the next one, especially when disasters strike, fires, flooding, bombings, whatever it is. There is a very, very specific way that they broadcast that news, so that you want the next piece of information, and the next update, and the next disaster, and the next tally, and the next reading, right? There is nothing good about it, friend. There is nothing good about it. And the effect to you is catastrophic. If you had all eyes through you, if you had the greatest sense of awareness and seeing and knowing through all parts of your body as to what happens every single time you engage with this thing called news, you would be offended. You'd probably be angry, and rightly so. And you'd that anger would serve a lot of purpose, because it would be your motivation to shift immediately and say, no more, I'm not doing this anymore. It's not okay. Don't want it in my life. You have no right to deliberately, consciously affect me like this, and to keep roping me back into it, and to cause this amount of chaos and stress in my body, in my family, in my home, in my life. It's not okay. So before this business, the news, and before TV started broadcasting the news, TV, television, tell-a-vision, telling you a vision, right? It's the wording is specific, because it means you are being told a vision. And it's not to say stop watching the television, but it's very important that you understand that you are being told a vision. at all times, whether it's through advertising or a movie or the news. You're getting told a vision, and all parts of your consciousness see that visually. So before that business, how did we communicate to each other about what was happening in our communities or with our neighbours? We would sit in conversation. That's why the corner stores were wonderful. You know, the corner grocery stores with the seats out the front, or the parks with all the seats in there. People would meet. There'd be relationships, connections, togetherness, conversation happening all the time, every day. And you, through these connections and bonds, you would share each other information about what is happening with you, getting updates about what's happening with your friends in the community, functions that are occurring, successes that people have had, openings of things. You would do that through human connection. And then somebody, what it seems to me, the way that people's innate wisdoms have brought this up, it seems to be that somebody at some point, or a group of people at some point, saw a potential to be able to tell you the way that things were through their perception, and through them wanting to tell you specific things to get a reaction, to influence you. That's the biggest thing, to influence you. And this thing called news was birthed. Now, maybe in the beginning, there was some genuine want or desire to share positive information, positive news, to try and connect people more. But that long ago changed. I know I'm repeating myself, but this is such a big deal that if your consciousness doesn't get it, you're being pulled into like a vortex that will just swallow you up, and the way that it affects you is just profound. I used to sit as a kid, and at 6 o'clock every night, the whole tone of the house would change. Everyone would need to be silent because the news was on, and Mum would more often than not be preparing dinner but listening to the news. Dad would be sitting in his chair listening to the news, and the entire energy of the house changed. His entire energy changed. He became angry and aggravated and agitated because he was so sensitive and so easily influenced by all the messages coming through. And the information that he received subconsciously was that shit was always hitting the fan, things are always bad, it's not safe out there, you have to protect yourself, there are bad people in the world, so on and so forth. That's a whole other story to go on and tell you how that affected him psychologically. Now, some people are more sensitive than others. It doesn't mean for the people who are not as sensitive, meaning they take in an enormous amount of information through their sensory abilities or the sensory system. It doesn't mean that people who don't have that same structural setup are less influenced. They are, but it's in different ways. So my question to you is, why do you watch it? Why do you listen to it? Why do you read it? Because it enhances your life in 0 ways, but it affects you pathologically, catastrophically in hundreds, if not thousands of ways. And I can say hand on heart with all honesty that for the years and years and years that I have not watched it, that I do not feel that I've missed out at all. At all. I have this sense of happiness and contentment in my life because I do not engage with it. And if for whatever reason, I love V8 supercar driving, love it. And at the weekend, the Bathurst supercars were on, and it was showing on Channel 7, which is just one of the commercial TV stations. and they have advertisements that run at every ad break. And that's the stuff that I'm not interested in. I understand the psychology behind it. No, I'm not here to play with that. I just don't care. So the moment it comes to those advertisements, I mute the TV and I will go off and do something else, and I will come back when they're finished just so I can engage again in the thing that brings me joy. So that's how far I take this, and I have very firm boundaries around that. And I will deliberately, like I've made decisions in the past where businesses blast the news, or morning TV shows, late afternoon TV shows. In Australia, and I know it's the same in a lot of countries, they have the morning shows that are they're presented in such a light-hearted and, we're great people and we love about you way, but it's not that. And when I had to go into the doctors a few weeks ago, and they've got this blasting on the TV into a place of health where people are coming into who are stressed, have illnesses, disease processes, trauma, anxiety, depression, and they're blasting this stuff into the waiting room. And that was just so telling to me, to the way that the healthcare system is currently resonating and operating. So I have made decisions in the past to specifically not go into business places because I know that they have that blasting over the radio or however it is, because I understand that much how it affects us. And the one thing that we really struggle with as human beings is having very clear, healthy boundaries and knowing that it's okay to say no and to not be tolerating this kind of thing into your reality anymore. So that's just one that I have. I had a client right at the start of 2020 when our Prime Minister came onto the TV, and with a big smile he declared that everyone was under martial law, that he was declaring martial law, and that everyone was to locked into their houses. I instinctively knew immediately that we were collectively, globally, going to be in a very big journey for many years. This is our firm boundaries, our coming to a realization of how destructive that news is now important that we come there and we get it. So when that was declared at the start of 2020, I had a client contact me who had been a producer and a reporter for many, many years on very big disasters around the world. And he contacted me and he said, Jacquie, don't watch any of it. Don't breathe in a word of it. Disconnect yourself from all of it. And I said, I'm not watching any of it anyway. And he said, because this is now what happens. Those producers are sitting there, and at the break, when they stop broadcasting the news and there is an ad break, in that ad break, their mission is to find information to make the next lot of news more urgent, more catastrophic, more worse. So if they're broadcasting a disaster, and at the last transmission they said that 33 people had been declared dead, at the next one after the break, that has to be updated, and they're looking for more dead tallies or more information that just tells you how bad it is. So at the last break, 33 people were dead. It's now confirmed 43 people are dead. This is devastating. La 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 la. Please, just disconnect. Please, please, please disconnect, right? Or at least have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself, why do I feel like I need to listen or watch or read this? Honestly, why? Because it is coming from a deep, deep place of fear of whatever it is, missing out, need to know, okay? I would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave them. I'm going to go I've got my next client coming in. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.